I never thought my life would change so dramatically on a Friday afternoon in September. The dust was still settling from the morning cattle drive when foreman Jake Morrison called me into the ranch office. His weathered face wore that expression I'd seen too many times before, the look of a man about to deliver bad news. "Listen, son," he started, not bothering to meet my eyes. "We're making some changes around here. Your services won't be needed anymore." The words hit me like a kick from an angry bull. I'd been working the Double M Ranch for 3 years, through scorching summers and brutal winters. I knew every inch of that land, every temperament of the cattle, every creaky board in the barn. "Is this about the Henderson incident?" I asked, referring to when I'd questioned his decision to move cattle during a thunderstorm. Jake finally looked up, his jaw set firm. "This is about attitude, boy. You think you know better than folks who've been ranching since before you were born." I felt the heat rising in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. "I was trying to protect the herd." "Well, now you can protect someone else's herd." He slid an envelope across the desk. "There's your final pay. Clean out your bunk by Sunday." As I walked out of that office, the other ranch hands avoided my gaze. Some looked sympathetic, others seemed relieved it wasn't them. The afternoon sun felt different somehow, harsher, more unforgiving. I had 48 hours to figure out my next move, and absolutely no idea where to start. Saturday morning arrived with a knock on my bunkhouse door that would change everything. The mailman stood there holding a certified letter, looking almost apologetic for disturbing me so early. The return address made my heart skip. Whitmore and Associates, estate attorneys. My hands trembled as I tore open the envelope. Inside was a letter that began with words I never expected to read. "Dear Mr. James Mitchell, regarding the estate of your great-uncle, Ezra Mitchell." Great-uncle Ezra. I barely remembered him. A gruff old man who'd visited maybe twice during my childhood. My father always said Ezra was the black sheep of the family, the one who disappeared into the mountains of Montana decades ago. According to the letter, Ezra had passed away 6 months earlier, and I was his sole heir. The inheritance included a cattle ranch in Glacier County, Montana, complete with land, livestock, and all equipment. The attorney needed me to contact them immediately to arrange transfer of ownership. I read the letter 3 times, certain it was some kind of mistake. Me inheriting a ranch. It seemed impossible, like something out of a movie. But the letterhead was real. The legal language, authentic. I grabbed my phone and dialed the number. When the receptionist answered, I could barely find my voice. "This is James Mitchell. I received a letter about an inheritance." "Oh, yes, Mr. Mitchell. We've been trying to reach you for months. Can you be here Monday morning? There are papers to sign." Monday morning. Just 3 days after losing my job, I was apparently about to become a ranch owner. The irony wasn't lost on me. Sunday evening, I loaded my beat-up pickup truck with everything I owned, which wasn't much. A duffel bag of clothes, my grandfather's saddle, a toolbox, and about $800 in savings. The other ranch hands watched from the bunkhouse porch as I drove away from the only home I'd known for 3 years. The drive to Montana took 14 hours, winding through endless highways and mountain passes. I stopped only for gas and coffee, my mind racing with questions. What condition was this ranch in? How many cattle? Was it even operational? The attorney had been vague on details, saying everything would be explained during our meeting. As I crossed into Montana, the landscape changed dramatically. Rolling hills gave way to towering mountains, and the sky seemed bigger somehow, more open. I'd always loved wide open spaces, but this was different, wilder, more untamed. I spent Sunday night in a roadside motel, barely sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jake Morrison's smug face, heard his dismissive words. Part of me wondered if I was making a huge mistake, chasing after some fantasy inheritance that might turn out to be worthless land and debt. But another part of me, the part that had always dreamed of running my own operation, whispered that this might be destiny. Maybe getting fired was the push I needed to claim something that was rightfully mine. Monday morning couldn't come fast enough. I was up before dawn, showering and putting on my cleanest shirt. Whatever waited for me at that attorney's office, I was going to face it head on. I'd learned long ago that running from problems never solved anything. The law office of Whitmore and Associates occupied a modest building in downtown Kalispell, Montana. Mrs. Sarah Whitmore, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, greeted me with a firm handshake and led me to her office overlooking the mountains. "Your great-uncle was quite a character," she began, spreading documents across her mahogany desk. "Ezra Mitchell owned the Broken Arrow Ranch, 12,000 acres of prime grazing land, plus mineral rights." 12,000 acres. My mouth went dry. The Double M Ranch where I'd worked was only 3,000 acres. The property includes the main house, 2 barns, equipment sheds, and currently houses about 800 head of Black Angus cattle, she continued. There's also a small but profitable gravel quarry on the north section. I stared at the property photos she showed me, rolling pastures stretched to the horizon, backed by snow-capped peaks. The main house was a sprawling log structure that looked like something from a Western magazine. "There is one condition," Mrs. Whitmore said, her tone becoming serious. "Your uncle specified that you must take active ownership within 30 days of notification and operate the ranch for a minimum of 1 year. If you abandon the property, it goes to the state. What about debts, taxes? All current. Your uncle was meticulous about finances. The ranch actually shows a healthy profit." She slid a bank statement across the desk. The number at the bottom made me blink twice. "This can't be right." "It is. Your uncle lived simply but invested wisely. The ranch generates substantial income from cattle sales and the quarry operation. You're inheriting a very successful business, Mr. Mitchell." The drive to the Broken Arrow Ranch took 2 hours through winding mountain roads. Mrs. Whitmore had given me detailed directions, but nothing could have prepared me for the moment I turned through those massive stone gates. The ranch name was carved into an weathered wooden arch, flanked by towering pine trees. The main house sat on a gentle rise, commanding a view of the entire valley. It was even more impressive in person. 2 stories of hand-hewn logs with a wraparound porch and stone chimneys. Smoke was rising from one of them, which struck me as odd, since the place was supposed to be empty. I parked near the front steps and climbed out, breathing in the crisp mountain air. The silence was profound, broken only by the distant lowing of cattle and the whisper of wind through the pines. This was my land now, my responsibility, my future. The front door opened before I could knock. A weathered man in his 60s stepped onto the porch, wearing worn jeans and a flannel shirt. His eyes were cautious, but not unfriendly. "You must be James," he said, extending a calloused hand. "I'm Tom Bradley, been the ranch foreman here for 23 years. Your uncle asked me to stay on until you arrived." Relief flooded through me. I'd been wondering how I was going to manage such a large operation alone. "Thank you for staying. I have to admit I'm feeling pretty overwhelmed right now." Tom nodded knowingly. "Ezra figured you might. He left detailed instructions about everything, the cattle, the equipment, the seasonal routines. Said to tell you that ranching's in your blood, even if you don't know it yet." As we walked toward the barns, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just an inheritance, it was a homecoming. Tom Bradley proved to be a patient teacher and an invaluable ally. Over the next few days, he walked me through every aspect of the Broken Arrow's operations. The scale was staggering compared to what I'd known at the Double M. The main herd consisted of 812 head of prime Black Angus cattle, scattered across 12 distinct pastures. Each pasture had its own water system, shelter, and rotation schedule designed to maximize grass growth and cattle health. The breeding program was sophisticated, with detailed records going back 15 years. "Your uncle was obsessed with genetics," Tom explained as we reviewed the breeding charts. "Every bull, every cow, every calf has a pedigree. He could tell you the bloodline of any animal on this ranch going back 5 generations. The equipment barn housed machinery I'd only dreamed of working with: modern tractors, hay balers, cattle handling equipment, and a state-of-the-art veterinary facility. Everything was meticulously maintained and organized. But it was the financial records that truly amazed me. Uncle Ezra had kept detailed books showing steady profits year after year. The cattle operation alone generated over $2 million annually, and the gravel quarry added another $500,000. "How did he manage all this alone?" I asked. "He wasn't alone," Tom replied. "He had me, plus 3 full-time hands and seasonal help during calving and harvest. We're a team, and we're good at what we do." That evening, sitting on the porch of my new home, I called my father to tell him about the inheritance. His reaction was typical. "Ezra always was the smart one in the family," he said. "Looks like he saw something in you that the rest of us missed." Maybe he had. Maybe this was exactly where I was supposed to be. 3 weeks into my new life as a ranch owner, I was checking cattle in the south pasture when my phone rang. The number looked familiar, but I couldn't place it immediately. When I answered, Jake Morrison's voice crackled through the speaker. "Well, well, heard you landed on your feet, Mitchell." I felt my jaw tighten. "What do you want, Jake?" "Funny thing happened yesterday. Had a buyer come through looking at our cattle, and he mentioned seeing some prime Black Angus up in Montana. Said the owner was some young hotshot who used to work down here in Texas." The smugness in his voice was unmistakable. I could picture him leaning back in his office chair, boots up on the desk, enjoying what he thought was my discomfort. "That's interesting," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Real interesting. See, we're having some cash flow problems down here. Lost a big contract, and the bank's getting nervous. Might have to sell off some of our herd." Now I understood why he was calling. Jake Morrison, the man who'd fired me for having attitude, was fishing for a lifeline. "Sorry to hear that," I replied, though I wasn't sorry at all. "Thing is, I remember you always had a good eye for cattle. Thought maybe you'd be interested in helping out your old boss. For the right price, of course." The irony was delicious. The man who dismissed me as worthless was now asking for my help. I let the silence stretch out, enjoying his discomfort. "I'll think about it," I finally said. "Don't think too long. This is a limited time offer." After he hung up, I stood there grinning. Jake Morrison had no idea what he'd just walked into, but he was about to find out. That evening, I sat at Uncle Ezra's massive oak desk, studying the Double M Ranch's financial situation. It hadn't been hard to find information. In the ranching community, word travels fast when an operation starts struggling. What I discovered was even worse than Jake had let on. The Double M was hemorrhaging money. They'd overextended on equipment loans, lost 2 major beef contracts due to quality issues, and were behind on property taxes. The bank had already started foreclosure proceedings. Jake Morrison's empire was crumbling. Tom knocked on the office door, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Burning the midnight oil. Just doing some research on my old employer." I showed him the financial reports I'd pulled up. "They're in serious trouble." Tom whistled low. "That's the ranch that fired you?" "The very same. And now the foreman wants to sell me cattle. You thinking about it?" I leaned back in the leather chair, considering. "Actually, I'm thinking about something much bigger." Over the next hour, I outlined my plan to Tom. His weathered face broke into a slow grin as he understood what I was proposing. "Your uncle would have loved this," he said. "Ezra always believed in poetic justice." The next morning, I called my banker in Kalispell. The Broken Arrow's credit was impeccable, and I had substantial cash reserves from the quarry operation. What I was proposing would be aggressive, but entirely feasible. I want to make an offer on a distressed property in Texas, I told him. The Double M Ranch. I believe they'll be motivated to sell. How motivated? Motivated enough to accept an offer that's fair but not generous. Sometimes the best revenge is simply being successful. The wheels were in motion. Jake Morrison was about to learn a hard lesson about humility. The call came on a Thursday morning. Jake's voice was strained, lacking its usual arrogance. "Mitchell, I need to talk to you about that cattle deal we discussed." "I'm listening." "Things have changed down here. The bank's pushing hard, and we need to move fast. I'm not just talking about selling cattle anymore." I let him sweat for a moment before responding. "What exactly are you talking about, Jake?" "The whole operation, the ranch, the cattle, the equipment, everything. We need a buyer who can close quickly." Perfect. He was walking right into my trap. "That's a big decision, Jake. I'd need to see detailed financials, property surveys, equipment inventories. This isn't something I'd go into blind." Of course. When can you get down here?" "I'll be there Monday, but Jake, I want you to understand something. If I'm going to consider this, it's going to be a business transaction, nothing personal." The lie came easily. This was absolutely personal. Monday morning found me walking through the Double M Ranch with a team of appraisers and accountants. The place looked different through the eyes of a potential owner rather than an employee. I could see the deferred maintenance, the outdated equipment, the signs of financial stress everywhere. Jake followed me around like a nervous puppy, pointing out improvements and making excuses for problems. The other ranch hands watched with obvious curiosity. Some recognized me, their expressions ranging from surprise to amusement. By Wednesday, I had a complete picture. The ranch was worth far less than Jake owed on it, but it had potential. With proper management and capital investment, it could be profitable again. Thursday afternoon, I made my offer. Jake's face went pale when he heard the number. That's pretty low, Mitchell." "That's the market, Jake. Take it or leave it." He took it. The closing took place the following Friday, in the same conference room where Jake had fired me just 6 weeks earlier. The irony wasn't lost on anyone present. Jake sat across from me, signing papers that transferred ownership of everything he'd built to the man he'd dismissed as worthless. The other ranch hands gathered outside the office windows, watching the proceedings with obvious fascination. Word had spread quickly through the small ranching community. The fired hand was buying out his former boss. "There's one condition to this sale," I said as Jake signed the final documents. "I want you to stay on as foreman." Jake's head snapped up, confusion and suspicion warring in his eyes. "What? You know this land, these cattle. Despite our differences, you're good at the operational side. I need someone with experience while I transition the management." "After what happened between us?" "Business is business, Jake. I'm not interested in petty revenge. I'm interested in making this ranch profitable again." It was a lie, of course. This was absolutely about revenge, but not the kind Jake expected. I wasn't going to fire him or humiliate him. I was going to do something much worse. I was going to succeed where he had failed, and I was going to make him watch. The attorney handed me the keys to the ranch. The same keys Jake had carried for 15 years. The weight of them in my palm was satisfying in a way I hadn't expected. "Welcome to your new ranch, Mr. Mitchell," the attorney said. I looked directly at Jake. "Thank you. I think this is going to work out very well." Jake nodded stiffly, but I could see the resentment burning in his eyes. He thought he was getting a second chance. He had no idea he was about to get a front-row seat to his own replacement. My first day as owner of the Double M Ranch began before dawn. I'd spent the weekend reviewing every aspect of the operation, identifying problems and planning solutions. The ranch hands gathered in the main barn for the morning briefing, their faces a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "I know there are questions about what's going to change around here," I began. "The answer is everything that needs to change and nothing that doesn't." I outlined my plans for the next 6 months. New equipment to replace the aging machinery. Improved breeding programs based on what I'd learned at the Broken Arrow. Better pasture management to increase carrying capacity. Most importantly, a return to the quality standards that would win back the contracts Jake had lost. "What about jobs?" asked Carlos, one of the senior hands. "Anyone who wants to work hard and learn new methods has a place here. Anyone who doesn't can find work elsewhere." Jake stood at the back of the group, his face unreadable. I'd deliberately not consulted him on any of these plans. He was learning about the changes the same way everyone else was. Over the following weeks, I implemented changes with methodical precision. New protocols for cattle health and nutrition. Upgraded facilities for handling and sorting. A computerized record-keeping system to track every animal's performance and breeding history. The results were immediate and dramatic. Cattle that had been losing weight under the old management began gaining. Pregnancy rates improved. The veterinary bills dropped as preventive care replaced crisis management. Jake watched it all with growing frustration. Several times he tried to assert his authority, only to be reminded that he was now an employee, not the boss. "This isn't how we've always done things," he complained after I introduced a new feeding schedule. "No," I replied calmly. "This is how we're going to do things now." 3 months after taking over the Double M, I received a call that made everything worthwhile. Henderson Beef, the major processor that had dropped their contract with the ranch under Jake's management, wanted to schedule a visit. "We've been hearing good things about the changes you've made," the procurement manager said. "If your cattle meet our quality standards, we'd like to discuss renewing our contract." The inspection took place on a crisp December morning. Henderson's team examined everything: the cattle, the facilities, the record-keeping systems, the feed programs. I watched Jake's face as they praised improvements he'd had no part in planning. "This is impressive work," the lead inspector told me. "Your cattle are in excellent condition and your documentation is thorough. We'd like to offer you a 3-year contract." The contract was worth $1.8 million annually, more than the ranch had ever generated under Jake's management. As I signed the papers, I caught Jake staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before. It wasn't anger or resentment. It was respect, grudging and unwilling, but unmistakable. That evening, I called Tom Bradley at the Broken Arrow to share the news. "Congratulations," he said. "Your uncle would be proud. You've taken everything he taught you and made it your own. I had a good teacher in you too, Tom. What about Morrison? How's he handling all this?" I glanced out the office window, where Jake was working late, checking cattle in the near pasture. "He's learning. Maybe for the first time in his life, he's learning what it means to work for someone who actually knows what they're doing. And how does that feel?" I considered the question carefully. Better than I expected, but not as good as knowing I earned it. The revenge was complete, but it felt different than I'd imagined. Less bitter, more satisfying. 6 months after buying the Double M Ranch, I stood in the same office where Jake Morrison had fired me. The room looked different now, organized, efficient, profitable. The walls displayed the contracts and awards that marked our return to success. Jake knocked on the doorframe. "Got a minute, boss?" The word still sounded strange coming from him, but he'd earned the right to use it. Despite his initial resistance, he'd adapted to the new methods and proven himself valuable. "What's on your mind, Jake?" He shifted uncomfortably, hat in his hands. "I owe you an apology. For how I handled things before, for firing you the way I did." I leaned back in my chair, studying his weathered face. "Go on." "I was scared, I guess. Scared of losing control, scared of admitting I didn't know everything. When you questioned my decisions, it felt like a challenge to my authority. It was a challenge to your authority, because your authority wasn't based on knowledge or results. It was based on pride. Jake nodded slowly. I see that now. Watching you turn this place around, seeing how you handle problems, I learned more in the last 6 months than I had in the previous 10 years. And what did you learn? That being a leader means listening to good ideas, no matter where they come from. That admitting you're wrong doesn't make you weak, it makes you stronger. I stood up and walked to the window overlooking the pastures. The cattle were thriving, the grass was green, and the future looked bright. Jake, I want you to know something. When I bought this place, part of me wanted to humiliate you the way you humiliated me. I wouldn't have blamed you, but I realized something. The best revenge isn't making someone else fail. It's succeeding so completely that failure becomes impossible. A year later, I stood on the porch of the Broken Arrow Ranch, watching the sunrise paint the mountains gold. The Double M was running smoothly under Jake's day-to-day management, and I'd promoted him to general manager with a partnership stake. He'd earned it. Tom Bradley joined me with 2 cups of coffee, a morning ritual we'd maintained despite my frequent travels between the ranches. Heard from Jake yesterday, he said. The Double M just signed another major contract. Good. He's learned to trust the process. What about you? You've got 2 successful ranches now. What's next? I sipped my coffee, considering the question. The boy who'd been fired for having too much attitude had become a man who owned 12,000 acres in Montana and 8,000 in Texas. But the numbers weren't what mattered most. I've been thinking about Uncle Ezra's letter, I said, the one Mrs. Whitmore gave me with the inheritance papers. Tom raised an eyebrow. What did it say? That success isn't about proving you're better than other people. It's about becoming better than you were yesterday. A hawk circled overhead, riding the morning thermals. In the distance, cattle moved slowly across the pasture, content and well cared for. You know what the real irony is? I continued. Getting fired was the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to stop playing it safe and start taking risks. And now I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Thank you for listening to my story. It's been quite a journey from that devastating Friday afternoon to where I am today. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me where you're listening from and what challenges you've overcome in your own life. And if you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel for more incredible tales from the American heartland. Sometimes our greatest setbacks really do become our most powerful comebacks.